And still UFC Heavyweight Division Champion.
Steve Miocic.
Yeah, I kind of messed that up.
And still. Hey, you tried. You tried.
Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. It's a beautiful Monday morning.
This is week 2 of the podcast.
Week 2 of the podcast, episode 4. Dominic, how we doing?
I'm great because we just witnessed history.
We did.
Stipe Miocic defends his light heavyweight. Man, we're struggling on this one. The heavyweight title against Daniel Cormier, greatest heavyweight of all time. Stipe's back.
Yeah, it's a big moment. Really, it was a big card for that reason. I know they were really selling it on that fight, but really, there was just a lot of fights that really did have implications for the divisions and whatnot, and that's what you want to see in a pay-per-view card. So, obviously, we'll be recapping the full main card for UFC 252, along with anything from the prelims that might have stuck out to us. But we'll get into that in a bit. I guess first, just what are your thoughts from week 1 of doing the podcast? And
a success. Again, we mentioned it on Friday's episode, and I just can't thank everyone enough for the support through week 1. And it's just great to see the positive feedback, the constructive criticism. All the pros, the cons. It's only going to make us better, and it really blew away all of our expectations. Not that we even set any expectations.
I think that shows how much they blew them out of the water. Because really, right. You guys were killing it with sharing it. Liking the video.
Our first video made it up over 200 views.
Which
was very amazing to see that. So we're gonna keep bringing it.
Yeah, following us on our Instagram and just kept a lot of people reaching out to us saying I watched the podcast, loved it, things like that.
Giving feedback, sharing it, retweeting, liking pictures, everything.
Yeah, we've honestly have really just been doing this for fun, and that's the way it should be. But ultimately, in our eyes, it was we're gonna do this no matter how many people are watching. Exactly. But it does feel. We do feel, I think, a lot better knowing that so many people
are interested. People want to
enjoy listening to us. So,
and we're literally, as of today, we're recording this on Sunday.
Right. 1
week officially of recording, posting the podcasts and everything. 1 week, and here we are. It's crazy. All the progress already in just a week.
Yeah, and it's only going to get better from here.
Yep.
Obviously, we're not slowing down anytime soon. That release schedule is still going to be the move for the foreseeable future. So hopefully y'all will just keep following us on this ride.
Absolutely.
But I guess with that being said, we'll get into the news.
The news
for this week. So I guess the best place to start, what's nice about this week is that we're not talking about fighters pulling out of fights, or potential death.
No more bad news.
Yeah, it's all pretty good this week. It's all about fight announcements, which is always nice to see.
Yeah, no other big storylines. It's more so just recent fight announcements ever since the last recording, really, which is even more incredible.
And our first one, Cowboy Cerrone.
He is back.
He's back. Have not seen him since January, right?
It's probably for the best.
It wasn't January. He fought on 249 against Pettis.
Oh my gosh, he did.
Yeah, so he actually just fought not too long ago, but I kind of
forgot
about that fight. Still a long break for him.
Yeah. I did forget about that fight.
But yeah, considering Cerrone is a guy who has said he'll try to fight 6 times a year.
Yeah.
It definitely feels weird seeing him gone for
it'll be 4 months, I guess, by the time he fights again.
So it's kind of interesting just to see him actually take a normal break from most fighters. But he's got his fight announcement out there on September 19th. He will be fighting a man by the name of Nico Price. Dom, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
This has exciting, crazy, wild written all over it, if you ask me.
Exactly.
When this first got announced, you did mention, and I agree with you, it might not be the best matchup for Cowboy. I don't know.
Yeah, So
it's a risky fight for him, especially. It's really not risky for Nico. This is Nico's first real big name.
yeah,
Like, he's fought very tough guys, but a guy like Cowboy on your resume, that's gonna catapult you to the next level.
yeah. Cowboy Cerrone, obviously a legend.
Most wins in UFC history. Most
finishes
in UFC history. Second most. It was the most, but as of last night, or UFC 252 when they're hearing this, the second most fights in UFC history.
Yeah,
and
on September 19th, he will likely tie it again.
Yes, he will tie it again.
But Donald Cerrone, legend, obviously, but he is on a 4-fight skid currently. All against top-level guys, don't get me wrong. I mean, losing to Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, and then his last loss to Anthony Pettis, which was a fight that was really close.
Yeah.
I don't remember how I had it scored, but I think there was a lot of people kind of calling for, anytime someone disagrees with the decision, they call it a robbery.
Yeah.
So it kind of loses the value of that word, which is why I hate when people say that, because really, like, that fight was really close.
I would like to go back and watch that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I might have had it for Cowboy if I remember right, but I don't think it was a robbery by any means. But Nico Price, a guy who's doesn't have near the name of a Cowboy Cerrone, but if you're someone who watches the UFC, even just a good amount, you've heard of this guy. Nico Price is just a very exciting fighter. Yes, savage. And he's really kind of gotten a pretty decent following under him, considering he's really been a guy in his UFC tenure that's traded wins and losses. Pretty much one win, one loss, one win, one loss. But even he's been going up against pretty good competition. The UFC's done a good job with matching him with other up-and-comers.
And they're always exciting fights.
So his last fight was against Vicente Luque. That was at 249 as well. That was a great fight. Probably the fight of the night. He's fought James Vick. That was the one where he KO'd Vick with an up kick.
That was Vick's welterweight debut? Was that at welterweight? I think it was when Vick moved up to welterweight after his little skid at lightweight. I could be wrong.
It might be, and it was over in a minute and 40 seconds.
Vick had a very tough little skid.
Yeah,
getting knocked out.
And then before that, he lost to Jeff Neal, who we talked about on the last podcast. But that dude's just.
That's what put Jeff Neal on the map.
Yeah, and then before that, he beat Tim Means, another up and coming guy, and even if you go before that, he beat Randy Brown, another guy that just lost to Luque.
Yeah.
And he also had that win over Alan Jouban, who I was a pretty big fan of, and. So
needless to say, he has fought very tough fights, very tough competition.
I'll put it like this with Nico Price.
Probably not a household name. But
he's a guy that goes in there and puts on an exciting fight every time. And he'll go all out. Yeah. He won't try to play it safe. He goes in there and is looking to take your head off, kill or be killed. That's
and by the way, guess who else does that? Cowboy Cerrone.
Yes.
Oh wait. They're fighting.
Yeah. So I think where I get into this being a potentially bad matchup for Cerrone is Cowboy has admitted that he is a slow starter.
Yeah.
He is someone that kind of, as the fight goes, he becomes more comfortable and starts getting into that mindset of like kill or be killed kind of thing.
Not a better example than the Conor fight.
Right. And ultimately, Nico Price does not have that issue from what I've seen. That guy comes out the gate and is just ready to take your head off. So that worries me a little bit for this matchup as far as for Cerrone, just because he does have that slow starter thing in him. That's not to say that, Nico's a bit wild.
Do you think Nico maybe even tries to get it to the ground? He can work from his back and even on top. I don't
know. I feel like this.
He might just want to strike.
To me, I feel like this matchup screams like stand-up war for as long as it goes.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty excited for this fight. I'm assuming if it's on the 19th, that means that's the week before the pay-per-view. So it's going to be on a fight night.
Yeah.
So they've been doing a pretty good job of. Really,
there have been a lot of good
some of these fight nights that are coming up. I've noticed just the top 2 or 3 fights on the card is like, wow, that's.
And then they're gonna give those last 2 fights on the main card some up and comers.
Yeah,
they've been really fun.
I think the fall is looking like the best time to be watching those free cards. they're free. I mean, well, as long as you pay your $5 a
Yeah.
month for ESPN Plus,
Yeah.
I mean, you're ultimately getting unlimited content there,
Yeah.
where like every week a new card basically.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those cards do air on ESPN, the main cards
Yeah.
at least. So sometimes you don't even have to pay the $5.
Exactly.
So honestly, this fall is going to be a big time to be, if you're someone who's new to the sport or just a guy who loves it but wants to get even more into it. This fall will be the time to be watching religiously.
Yeah.
Big title fights on the
big pay-per-views.
yeah.
2 pay-per-views that haven't even been mentioned yet.
Yeah.
And those are always really big ones, November and December. So,
Yeah, but ultimately, not to get too far
here
away
we go
from
on
this
a
fight.
tangent again.
Yeah,
Cerrone versus Nico.
I like this fight. I think it's going to be a barn burner for sure. I'm just, as someone, obviously we all love Cowboy Cerrone, and I do love Nico Price as well. But this fight does make me a little nervous for Cowboy. Just you don't want to see him get on a
5 in
fight
a row.
because he's a guy that says he wants to keep fighting until he gets to what 40
I wouldn't be
UFC
surprised.
fights, and he's on.
He's
35.
got 5 left. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. Any other thoughts before we move on?
I'm just excited.
Okay. The next announcement, we have 2 for the same card on October 3rd. So
Yes.
the first one was actually announced last night. Was announced as the headliner, I believe. And that was Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana.
Yes, announced
is,
it on the broadcast last night.
Rescheduled fight. It was supposed to
I
be
think it was supposed to be
August 2nd.
Yeah, it was supposed to be sometime this month.
Yeah, it was supposed to be at the beginning of the month, and
I guess it was an injury to Irene, undisclosed,
Yeah,
or was it Holly? I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact. I thought it was Aldana who got hurt or had COVID or whichever it might have been. But fight got scrapped. Now it's been officially rebooked for October 3rd.
And now it's a main event.
That's the main. Well, it was the main event.
It was?
The first time as well. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on that matchup? And maybe I know it's a far ways away. We're talking October, but
initial thoughts tough for Holly. I think Irene's kind of that new wave of bantamweight contenders in that women's division. So it should be interesting. I believe she's a striker too, if I remember correctly. We know Holly's obviously a great kickboxer. It should be fun. It has the makings of being a fun fight.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's a main event. I wonder what other fights they'll try and stack on that fight night. But it can be a fun stand-up war.
Well, I can tell you what they're gonna stack on.
Oh yeah, we have another.
The other fight announced for that card, which probably excites me even more, is the guy we mentioned quite a bit about in our first episode, I believe, Beneil Dariush.
Yes.
He has his next fight on October 3rd against the number 6 ranked, I believe, Charles Oliveira.
We were calling for top 10, and here we are with the top 6 now.
Man, I am definitely a little shocked that they gave him Oliveira. I mean, that's a big jump, but hey, I'm all for Dariush getting that.
Oliveira is on a tear.
Yeah, this fight is going to be nuts because
this could be one of those really fun ground, like technical grappling submission attempts and escapes.
Yeah.
Oh, or they could stand. But I see it on the ground just being just wild.
Dude, Oliveira has literally looked like
most
a title.
submission wins in UFC history.
He's looked like a title challenger. Like, he legitimately looks like he could win the belt.
He is hitting his stride right now at the perfect time. And I think he's only 30 and he's been in the UFC for years.
Yeah.
And this is a guy that's so different from anyone else in the top 10 of the lightweight division. This is exciting.
Yeah.
This guy's slept on.
No,
he could give any of these guys trouble.
I completely agree with you there. And I'm very happy to see Dariush get in this fight because he looked amazing in his last fight. And really, he's been a guy that I think's been underrated for a while. And Oliveira is another guy who people have underestimated and underrated for a long time.
Especially now that he's on this win streak and he's still not getting
look at his last win against Kevin Lee was a showing. Kevin Lee's been a guy that there's been a lot of people believing in. A lot of it, he's kind of drum up his own hype with calling for fights with GSP and stuff like that. So he was really looking to make that step into superstardom.
He's on a 7 total win streak right now.
Unfortunately that didn't happen for Kevin Lee, but man, Oliveira
14 submission victories in the UFC.
Yeah. Oliveira, that fight was the last card, the last main event before we had that 6-week break with COVID.
Yeah,
So,
that was the first one without fans.
yeah.
Because it was in Brazil, I
Yep.
think.
Yep. So all in all, this is Oliveira's first fight since then, and
Oh, man. That's a fun fight. Holy moly.
yeah. But to go back to Holm and Aldana, just so I didn't really touch on it, but Aldana, her last fight, KO's Ketlin Vieira, another promising up and comer. So, especially when you're getting a KO on someone in the women's divisions.
Yeah, they don't happen.
You don't see them that much, at least not as common.
As frequently, yeah.
So it's that definitely puts her. I love this matchup because basically Holly Holm is a legend of the division, a legend of women's MMA, but and former champion. Obviously, the head kick on Ronda heard around the world,
and she's always fighting the best of the division.
Yes, and that's what I was gonna say is that Holly Holm is essentially. I don't think she's much of a title challenger anymore, but a strong gatekeeper.
And it's crazy because she literally had a title fight 2 fights ago at 145.
Yeah, I know.
It's wild. But she's one of those people that get a lot of title shots, but she's always beating the right people to get the title shot.
And she's always been competitive in those fights outside of the last one against Nunes, but that's nothing to hold your head on, right?
She's kind of a big deal.
If you really look at who Holly Holm has lost to since, she beat Ronda for the belt, was 10-0. Then she loses it to Miesha Tate, another legend of women's MMA. Then her next loss is to Valentina Shevchenko, dominant.
Yeah.
Then she loses to Jermaine Durandamy, who obviously that was the inaugural women's featherweight
and a controversial fight.
Yeah, a terrible fight. Overall, just not a great time.
But at the level of competition, still a great
Jermaine
fighter.
Durandamy is a great who gave Nunes some trouble on the feet. You know.
Yeah.
Then she's lost to Chris Cyborg, another just legend, and she lost to Amanda Nunes with the head kick.
Yeah.
Her wins in that time have been Betch Correa, who just got released and really not great.
Former title challenger, but not great.
Megan Anderson, who's looked pretty good.
She's a beast at 140.
And her last fight beat Raquel Pennington back in January. Another
all
just
top
tough.
5.
Yeah. So this will be a great fight to really see, is Irene Aldana
is she
for
ready?
real?
Yeah.
Is she a top 5? I think that's kind of how I gauge Holly Holm fight at this point.
And really, in this division, one convincing win, and you can honestly get a title shot because Amanda's beating everybody.
If Aldana comes in and really looks incredible against Holm, I bet she will get a title shot. She could get a title shot. Because they're desperate for contenders right now in those two divisions.
The only other one looking at the list that stands out to me is Aspen Ladd.
Yeah.
And she was injured recently, so I don't know if she's healed or whatnot yet.
Yeah,
But that's the only other person. So.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see kind of how that goes. Many other thoughts on those two fights?
Both fun. When you pair those together, that makes for a pretty solid. I'm assuming that'll be the co-main, Oliveira.
I would like to think so, yeah.
Dayush. So 3 other fights that are probably going to be solid. Probably not hugely known names, but I think it'll be a fun card just with those 2 fights alone.
Agreed.
The co-main.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that co-main's going to be insane. So moving on from there. This is not an official fight announcement, but I think it's worth noting. We saw some Twitter fingers going back and forth this weekend.
Some very cringy
Twitter
work.
Chris Weidman, the former middleweight champion.
We discussed him in our first ever podcast.
Who just fought last weekend on the
UFC
fight night,
Vegas 6.
On the fight night card on Saturday. And he was being called out by, I believe, the number 14 ranked Marvin Vettori. And Dom, I don't know. I didn't read too deep into what these guys were saying back and forth. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on this potential matchup if it happens.
Yeah, so Vettori posted a picture on Twitter of Chris Weidman's face basically photoshopped onto a woman's body, and he called him Christina Weidman and said that was his new girlfriend, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. That was the initial thing. So Chris Weidman, being the veteran that he is and the older guy, he's like, shut up, dork. I've fought, all these guys, and who are you? And then Vettori responds one more time and said, well, I would fight a top 15 guy, but nobody wants to accept a fight against me.
Mm-hmm.
And then so on and so forth. Overall, though, Vettori's 14th. Weidman's now at 11 after his win. It's a fight that actually does make sense.
Oh, I agree.
And I'm not opposed to seeing it. And I believe Vettori would probably win.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons
if Chris Weidman fights like he did last weekend.
One of the reasons I included it is because even though it's not an official announcement or anything, it's just guys jawing back and forth. But because that fight does kind of excite me. I know Weidman's last fight was not a very good showing for him or his opponent, Omari Akhmedov. But
I think in order for Weidman to get back into the top 10, which is obviously what he wants to do, he needs to fight one more top 15. And this is a guy that's like a striker.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a fight that makes sense, and if Weidman can win and look better than what he did in his first fight back at 185, then maybe he is ready for a top 10. I still don't think he's going to get close to a title ever again, but you never know.
Yeah, and overall...
And Vettori needs a guy like this on his resume. So.
Yeah, I agree. And Vettori, kind of like what I was talking about Nico Price, has kind of quietly been gaining this like following in the community. A lot of that being because, I mean, obviously because he's a stud.
This is a guy that fought Israel Adesanya not long ago.
And lost to a split decision.
Yes. Split decision.
Right.
That means a judge picked him to win. One judge.
So, a lot of that support, not only because he's great, but because he's been having a really hard time getting fights. And when he's gotten them, he's had a hard time with people dropping out of those fights and not getting replacements.
Yeah.
Just in the last... Since September of 2019, 4 of his fights have been canceled. 1 against Andrew Sanchez, 1 against Darren Stewart, and then 2 against Carl Roberson. And then they finally got that fight booked, and he ended up submitted him in the first round. So he's kind of gained that support, and also he did go on to reschedule Andrew Sanchez and beat him by unanimous decision. Just wanted to point that out. But it's just, I could tell he's been getting frustrated with, for one, not getting a lot of like fights that like people above him or whatever aren't wanting to accept that fight with him, and 2, when he is getting fights, they haven't actually gone into the octagon. Something has happened along the way where the guys had to drop out of the fight and then they don't find a replacement, and I bet that has been frustrating. But when he's actually fought in the last year or so, he's looked incredible.
He's won 3 in a row.
That Roberson fight, Roberson's no joke, and he looked really good in that fight.
Marvin's 15-4-1. Weidman's 15-5. Records are basically identical.
Yeah, I mean, think about it.
Rankings are 11-14. Like, it's a fight that makes sense for the division and for both guys.
And he did fight Omari Akhmedov as well back on UFC 219 in 2017.
And I think you can argue, obviously Vettori probably has more to gain off of this fight if they were to fight, but Weidman still has credit to gain here. Like, he wants to prove he's actually legit. Because no one was impressed by his fight.
No.
I think that's clear.
Yeah.
So if he can, especially if he can win and look better, it's an important fight for him, too.
It's definitely an important fight for him. If he were to lose this one and be KO'd, or, I mean, even if he just doesn't, if he looks like the Weidman that showed up last Saturday,
he's getting beat.
I would like to see him retire.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to tell someone how to run their career. I'm just saying that that's something I would like to see as someone who is a fan. But what I was trying to say was that Vettori had fought Akhmedov back at the very last card of 2017, and it ended up being a majority draw. And then the next fight was against Adesanya, who is the current looking incredible
undefeated middleweight
champion, and lost by a split decision. And that was literally April of 2018.
Not long ago.
Adesanya won the belt from Robert Whittaker in, I believe, September of 2019.
Yeah. So
less than a year and a half later, and Adesanya gets the belt, and Vettori is still struggling to find these fights. So it'll be interesting to see how that fight, if it actually gets booked.
Yeah, hopefully it gets booked.
Yeah,
this is again all
honestly
Twitter
based off. I don't know why, but from what I was like reading, with their going back and forth and their responses to it, like being interviewed, to me it feels like it's going to happen.
And that would happen by the end of the year, I would assume.
So more probably to come on that, but any last thoughts before we get into the final news story today?
I'm just ready to get into this final one because I know what it is.
I know
and
you're
it segues
excited.
off of this.
Yeah, I know you are very excited because October 17th,
Oh, man.
we have officially gotten our announcement for just this fight just excites me to no end. Korean Zombie is back, Chan Sung Jung, and he's fighting Brian T. City Ortega.
Finally, Brian T. City's back.
Yeah, Dom, tell the people about T. City.
I
and
love
about Korean
Brian
Zombie.
Ortega. Undefeated going into his championship fight with Max Holloway. Unfortunately, took a big L in that. That was a brutal.
Well, he looked good early on.
Yeah.
I mean, both guys looked great early on.
And then Max showed that there's levels to this shit.
And Max really did beat him down in
Yeah.
the later rounds. But God, what a beating he took and just kept going.
And
that fight got ended by a doctor stoppage.
Yeah, it was brutal.
It wasn't even because he wasn't.
He didn't want to quit.
Like some of those shots Max were hitting. Max, that was like his crowning achievement as
Yeah.
like his run.
Yeah.
Like he was hit like just on it that night.
Yeah.
And he could not finish him.
It was crazy.
At least finish him in the traditional way.
Yeah, right. This fight, I don't even. I'm like left speechless. The Korean Zombie is that's the best nickname. Like that's the only way to describe this guy. He just gets hit, keeps coming.
Yeah.
Can't go down
He's a
unless he gets hit by a spinning back fist at the very end of a fight.
literal zombie. So, I think it's needless to say we're very excited for this fight.
This fight could be fight of the year.
This fight has title implications as well. This
Yes.
isn't just an
Yes.
exciting fight. This fight really matters, and I'm glad it's happening for the division because these are, I believe, Ortega's ranked number 2.
Ortega ranked 2, Korean Zombie ranked 4th.
Yeah, perfect matchup right there.
And this is a long time in the making, by the way.
Yeah. So obviously we mentioned Korean Zombie. He has that pressure style where he'll keep getting hit and just keep moving forward.
Unbelievable.
Ortega, jiu-jitsu specialist, but a guy has shown that he has some good stuff in his punches, knocking out the first guy to ever knock out Frankie Edgar.
Yeah.
Ever finish Frankie Edgar.
Yeah.
And he, with that uppercut, sent Frankie Edgar
flying into
the air. So,
and now we've got Zombie, who's coming off a TKO finish of Frankie Edgar as well.
yeah. So,
This fight makes sense in every possible way. You cannot convince me there's a better fight.
yeah, and it'll be interesting to see because, man, Ortega has literally not fought since December of 2018. So basically 2019.
That's a long
It's
layoff.
been almost 2 years.
Yeah, by the time he steps in the octagon, it will be almost 2 years.
While for Korean,
And what a freaking fight to come
Korean
back.
Zombie last fought in December of 2019. So really,
Almost a year.
he's been off for a while as well. But there's been a lot going on in the world, so it's understandable right now. But Zombie's just looked on another level lately. I know he had the loss to Yair Rodriguez, but that was a fight he was winning.
That fight was
He would have won
insane.
that fight more than likely. But Yair, for those of you that don't know, it kind of got a little weird at the end. They kind of started hugging a lot and stuff.
Yeah, they were hugging a lot.
But, it looks like this fight's going to go all the way through the 5th round. It's going to go to the judges. And based on what the majority of viewers at home were thinking was that Korean Zombie's going to get this win. He's definitely winning this fight. Well, with literally just out of nowhere.
I mean, was there 1 second left?
Yeah.
It was literally at the
Yair hits him with a spinning elbow to the face.
To the face.
And Zombie's out cold.
Good night.
With 1 second.
Asleep.
Night.
Dreaming in the middle of the octagon.
Yeah, ridiculous.
After a brutal war, by the way.
One of the best
fights and best knockouts I've ever seen.
Yeah. And ultimately, Yair gets the win because of that, obviously. He just knocked out Korean Zombie. And that's... Talk about... That is no joke, knocking out a guy
That's a walk-off home run if I've ever seen one.
Korean Zombie is a guy that does not get knocked out easy. Doesn't get finished easy.
Zombie.
Literal zombie.
Yeah.
So, On paper, this fight looks like it is going to be impressive.
And I really just want to see how Ortega bounces back.
That's the big question,
man.
right?
This guy was on a tear before the title
Yeah.
fight. 6-0 in the UFC, all finishes, I think, or
Yeah.
mostly of them.
Yeah,
Most of them.
the big question is going to be where, I think for me, if you want to get in kind of when I'm getting into like the personal side of this, is how motivated is Ortega? Is he motivated to come back and show people that he's still the real deal? He's still T-City? Or is it just like, I'll take another fight and then maybe he goes on to do some of the other stuff he has going on outside of the cage? Because, that dude's going to have... That dude can do anything, really. Yeah. He's a good-looking guy.
He's a surfer.
Yeah. Like,
Crazy.
that dude can do anything, so... we'll see how that kind of goes, but
That fight's insane.
that fight, I'm so excited for that, and I cannot wait till we get an episode where we can talk about it in full detail.
That's gonna be a fun one.
Any other thoughts?
There is one other piece of news.
Okay.
That technically came last night during the pay-per-view, and it's already a fight we knew was gonna happen, but we got an official date. Adesanya and Costa. We finally know the date for the middleweight championship. UFC 253 will take place Saturday, September 26th.
Yep. Originally, it was scheduled to be September 19th.
Right.
They pushed it back a week. I think a lot of that's just because they're trying to... I think they're going to try to put it over on Fight Island.
Yeah, I would imagine that's where it would have to take
And
place.
I think that was just the reason for that. So now there will be a fight night on the 19th, and 26th will be the pay-per-view.
Yep, and there's one fight left, one spot left on that pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they should try to do Whitaker versus Cannonier to pair it as the co-main in case of injury, and it just makes sense because the winner of that fight will obviously fight the winner.
I'm expecting that to be what they do, but obviously you never know. But just getting into this main event, wow.
You talk about an episode you're excited for.
Dana literally said at the post-fight press conference last night, he said that fight is his prediction for fight of the year. Mind you, we just saw not even, like, I guess that was March.
It was the last pay-per-view before COVID.
Joanna Jędrzejczyk
nice.
versus Weili Zhang.
Yes.
That fight...
The best women's mixed martial arts fight to ever exist, and one of the best overall, doesn't matter what gender, UFC fight I've ever seen in my life.
And I know that Dana saying is I mean, he's trying to drum up hype just like any other promoter.
Yeah, they're
would.
hyping this up a lot.
But honestly, I kind of believe him. This fight, stylistically on paper, is made for just the top fights of all time.
Both undefeated. 19-0 Adesanya, 13-0 Paulo.
One of those O's
has got to go.
So
somebody's getting an L.
Somebody's getting an L.
Who's it gonna be?
Who's it?
We don't know.
We'll find out.
We'll find out in a month.
But what I was gonna say was, stylistically, if you look at these two fighters, what makes this matchup so intriguing outside of the bad blood and whatnot, Adesanya is a counterpuncher who tries
beautiful counterpuncher.
Yeah, who tries to stay on the outside and pick you apart. Costa
is a bull
who will put the pressure on you,
run at you. He's like the middleweight version of Ngannou.
I don't know about that comparison, because he will take the hardest punches that you can throw at him and keep pushing forward.
He just eats them. He bites down on a mouthpiece and just slings leather.
If you guys have not seen the fight, Paulo Costa versus Yoel Romero from UFC 241.
Pause this podcast and go watch it now. Then come back.
After you finish watching the podcast, then go watch that fight.
That's a better idea.
But that fight, while being an awesome fight, Yoel Romero is one of the most powerful dudes in any weight division. Yeah. And he was sitting there. I remember at one point he threw a head kick, vicious head kick, lands perfectly clean on Paulo's head, and he's just like, eh.
All right, here comes another left hook.
He's like, all right. He's like, yeah, I'm a Terminator. I can just take that shit.
It's like the episode, or not the episode, but the movie Home Alone 2, where Kevin throws the brick He just gets hit in the head with a brick. Except he went down. Paulo Costa ain't going to go down. He's going to take that brick to the head and then punch you in the face.
Well, that was an interesting comparison.
It just came to mind.
But I guess all in all, this fight is gonna. I feel like we're gushing over all these fights, but these were like some big announcements, really. When you think
this is why we're saying like the fall of 2020.
Woo! Yeah, I'm excited, and obviously we are going to be getting into a lot more about this fight.
That's going to be our next pay-per-view breakdown.
I know. Yeah, and hopefully they do pair that. Hopefully they do give that co-main spot.
It only makes sense
to Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier. God, that fight will be crazy
and we can
as
get
well.
Back on Fight Island. Ooh.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to pull out our Fight Island shirts for that.
I had it on last night. We weren't even at an island.
We were not. So I guess that's
the news.
That is the news.
All fight announcements, but I can't complain.
Yeah, as of Monday. So I guess after
time.
that, it's time to get into the recap of UFC 252.
Let's get into this.
And I don't think there's any better way to start this than saying, and still.
And still.
And still.
Greatest heavyweight of all time.
Let's start by giving Daniel Cormier all the respect.
Yeah, let's give him a send-off here.
Daniel Cormier is without a doubt one of the best fighters the UFC has ever seen. The fact that he was able
in two
divisions to do what he did is incredible.
And at the age that he did it.
At the age he did it. And if you want to even talk about combat sports in general, what he was able to do.
Yep. Olympic wrestler. What a great person.
Yeah. And a great ambassador for the sport.
For the company.
Great commentator.
I can't wait to hear him commentate again.
Yeah.
He's very good.
But he did not win this fight.
He did not win.
Our boy Stipe Miocic
got the dub. Unanimous decision victory.
Unanimous decision and still. And I just want to start by saying that Stipe looked incredible in this fight.
He did.
He really had a great game plan for DC. A game plan that going into that fight, I don't think anybody would have thought would have worked for him.
The clinching is
everybody,
what I figured you were pointing at.
Everybody would have thought that he should avoid the clinch.
He took the clinch to DC and held control significantly. The strength difference really showed last night.
I was going to say that.
And I knew that Stipe looked so strong, stronger than he had ever looked, and at the same time leaner than he had ever been. But the strength showed last night.
Yeah, he looked incredible. I mean, honestly, there's no other way to put it. I mean, that was one of the best performances of his career as a champion, especially.
To be able to take 4 rounds from DC, arguably 5, but I had 4-1. To be able to win 4 rounds against DC, only one other man's done that. And it's John Jones.
Yeah.
So it was a very dominant performance, and if it had not have been for DC landing the big right hand in round 1, I think you could definitely argue it was a 5-0 for Steve.
Yeah. We're gonna backtrack to the first fight of the card.
Oh yeah, I guess we
because so we still have more thoughts about this, obviously, and especially what's next for these guys. But just to break down the results from the whole main card. Stipe beats Daniel Cormier, retains his heavyweight belt by unanimous decision. The co-main, Marlon Vera getting the surprising TKO finish over Sugar Sean O'Malley.
What an interesting fight.
Giving O'Malley his first defeat in late first round.
The Sugar Show is no longer on air right now.
Then you had Jairzinho Rosenstruik getting a TKO finish over Junior Dos Santos in the second round. Then you had Daniel Pineda getting the TKO finish over Herbert Burns in the second round. And lastly, our first fight, Merab Davalishvili beating John Dodson by unanimous decision. And I want to start by offering a correction here.
Yeah, we both have corrections.
Remember what we said in episode 1 about, figuring it out as we go?
Yeah, well, we figured a couple things out.
Yeah, I made a big blunder in our preview episode. And I'm apologizing for that. Daniel, especially when he fucking wins the fight. I was like, seriously,
In
not
convincing
not
fashion.
yeah. Not only did I fuck this up, but then you had the gall to win the damn fight. So now it makes me look even worse. And that's with Daniel Pineda. I said it was his UFC debut. This man's a whole ass vet.
That was his 8th UFC fight.
That was his 8th UFC fight.
Now, I'm going to give you a little credit here.
Right.
It was his first fight back in the UFC
Yeah.
in 6 years.
Yeah, he had 7 fights
Yeah.
a few years ago, basically, and
So,
he went 3-4 during that time. So he and really, he wasn't fighting anybody that I really know too much about, but definitely an oversight. But we will get better at that, obviously, and
I think I also saw on a list on my phone or something that this fight was at light heavyweight for whatever reason. This was at featherweight, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
So, 60 pounds off.
Yeah,
Don't know what happened there, but both of our blunders were on that fight.
Yeah, and but all
We
apologies to
apologize.
Daniel Pineda.
Yeah, what a stud.
Yeah, so I guess backtracking again.
Yeah, backtracking again. First fight of the night.
Yeah.
Let's go in order.
So we got Merab Davalishvili beating
Very
John Dodson. And
vet.
we're also, another thing about our recap shows is we're going to have an ongoing little competition between me and Dominic.
Probably going to be recorded in that spreadsheet of yours.
Yeah, so ultimately we're going to pick every month all 5 fights of the main card, and whoever gets the most right will get the dub for that card, and we'll keep it ongoing.
Yeah.
Not the best card to start because me and you both got 2 out of 5.
Yep, 2 out of 5. That's 40%.
That's 40%.
That's
So,
a failing grade.
we are 0-1 right now in our ongoing competition. So this fight, though, you predicted perfectly correct.
I really did.
Yeah, Merab by decision.
And really, based off my notepad here,
Yeah.
everything went exactly how I pictured that fight going. Merab controlled the first round completely, held the clinch control, and landed the most knees to the ass I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I would have fallen after one knee. So shout out John Dodson. So he controls the whole first round. Second round, they're just kind of throwing, lots of quick movement, very fast paced. Merab had 2 big slams, but was never able to hold Dodson down that whole entire fight. But nevertheless, I had it 2-0. Then the third round starts. They look at each other, touch gloves, and then they scream at one another, which kind of scared me a little bit.
That was I liked it.
It was interesting. But then again, it was just another fast-paced round. Not a whole lot happened. Merab did enough to where it was a convincing 3-0 unanimous decision.
Yeah, and I had John Dodson by decision, and part of that is UFC Fight Pass's fault. Because I'll be completely honest, I had not really heard of Merab prior to this fight. Ultimately, I tried to go back before our preview show and watch some of his. He's on a 4-fight. Well, before now 5 fight, but before he was on a 4-fight win streak. I was like, okay, I want to at least see one of his last couple fights. But the only 2 fights of his UFC tenure that I was able to watch were the ones he lost.
Yeah.
I just for whatever reason. So I did not give him the credit in my mind that he deserves, because I found out after the preview show, I was watching an interview that Aljamain Sterling did, who is in the same camp as Merab and was in his corner last night.
His corner
Legends.
is stacked.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in that interview, Sterling talked about how Merab had gotten the bantamweight division record for most takedowns in a fight. And I went...
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And I shit my pants a little bit. I went, well, that's
Prediction's
news.
not looking too hot.
That's news to me.
Yeah.
But what was surprising to me is when you look at all of his wins and you see decisions, you would probably assume, well, he's probably not that exciting of a fighter, that he's like got a safe style or whatever.
No,
but you know what?
That's definitely not the case.
He was that was actually a pretty fun fight.
It was.
I think it was better than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a little more. I don't know. I guess I thought it would be fast paced, but just not as much action as there actually was.
Yeah, John Dodson usually keeps a good pace in his fights, but if you're being taken down throughout the fight, which I did know that Merab was a wrestler at least, and I figured if he was going to be getting taken down, the pace would slow down drastically because there's not so much you can do
right
from the bottom to keep it exciting, at least in the pace portion. But all in all, great performance from Merab. He cracked into the top 15 before this fight, and now he just beat the number 12 Dodson. I think he's ready for a top 10 guy.
Yeah, I was about to say, let me pull up the rankings here. Let's do a little matchmaking.
The first name that stuck out to me, and I don't know if because the UFC, at least when I hear a lot of matchmakers, whether they're on Twitter or whatever doing stuff, they like to pair guys coming off of losses and guys coming off on win streaks paired up.
I got a fight already.
I was gonna say Cody Stamann.
Yes.
Yeah.
Literally, yes.
Yeah.
He is on a heater right now.
Yeah.
Marab's on a heater.
Yeah, but
both getting wins during quarantine.
Stamann did lose his last fight though to Jimmy Rivera.
That just happened.
Yeah, and Jimmy Rivera did a great job of controlling that fight, but Stamann did have his moments, man. And either that or I don't know if you saw someone else that might stick out to you, but a guy that I think could make for a great fight. I don't know if they want to do it yet because he might be too big of a name. I like the idea of him fighting either someone like Dominic Cruz or Jose Aldo. It might be a little too soon for Aldo. Dominic Cruz, I do not imagine will accept that fight because ultimately he said he wants to fight like big names. Or hell, even match him up with a Sun Tzu. That could be fun.
I'm thinking,
or Jimmy Rivera if you want to do the winners. Like that's a classic wrestler versus wrestler.
So let's think here. Merab was 15th, Dodson was 12th. So you'd imagine they probably move him up to at least 12th.
Right.
So then we're talking, a 12-9 matchup if it's Stamann, a 12-8 if they match him up with a Sun Tzu, a 12-7 if they match him up with Rivera. All makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, Cody Stamann is really sticking out to me as a fight that would be fun.
I think it would be. I think it...
Any of those three guys would be a fun fight. But a Sun Tzu and Stamann would be very interesting to see how those two would play out.
I definitely agree. And, man, seeing how Merab, like, as soon as that fight was over, he, like, hugs Dodson, and then he just starts freaking yelling.
Yeah, a lot of yelling.
I loved it, though.
It was cool,
the intensity that he was showing.
We need him on this podcast.
That guy brings the energy.
We'll just sit here and let him yell into the mic and get everybody hyped.
Yeah, so that fight definitely put him on my radar.
Yes.
But really just a better fight than we probably thought it was going to be, and you always like to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts of that fight?
It went how I expected, just a little bit more fast-paced and more fun.
Yeah. So the second fight was the aforementioned
the blunder
Daniel Pineda, his re-debut
in
the promotion, going up against a big up-and-comer, Herbert Burns.
Yes.
And I want to start by mentioning that Herbert Burns missed weight for this fight.
3.5 pounds.
3.5 pounds.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's not even close.
Pineda ends up getting a TKO win in the second round.
In a fight that he dominated. Round one, completely controlled Burns, which caught me by surprise.
Yeah.
Burns started hot in the second,
Mm-hmm.
and then Pineda reversed him on the ground, and it was over. I mean,
he got him in a crucifix and just started landing those crazy elbows.
Could you imagine being pinned like that and just taking those shots to the face?
For those of you that don't know, a crucifix is when the guy with the... It doesn't always have to be top position, but that's how I'm going to describe it because that's what happened. The guy who... Let's say he has you on the bottom, right? So you have a guy on top. And imagine your left arm is trapped under his, in between his legs, and your right arm is behind his head, trapped by with his arms. You literally cannot you cannot move your arms. Your arms are stuck there. Your head is exposed.
Yes.
And then imagine that this guy
is elbowing you
right
over and over again, right in the face.
It was really impressive.
Yeah. It was a very impressive
Herbert Burns, obviously we touched on him being an up-and-comer. He not only...
Brother of welterweight title contender Gilbert Burns.
Herbert Burns was on Dana White Looking for a Fight.
Yeah.
Then he was on Dana White Tuesday Night Contender.
Yeah.
And he's looked great since
Needless to say, that is the definition of a young, up-and-coming prospect.
Yeah. And
he
Pineda...
got shut down by the seasoned vet.
Yeah, Pineda by all... I mean, obviously... Now we realize he's a vet of the UFC, But even in general,
that was his 40th fight.
Yeah, the guys had a lot of fights. So Pineda looked great in this though, and I'm excited that feel bad for Herbert kind of getting a big L like that, but
he'll be back.
Yeah, he'll be back. And for Pineda, I'm just happy to see that a guy got that second chance and really shown that he belongs.
Now I've got 2 fun matchups for you. This is men's featherweight division, 145
right.
pounds.
I mean, do you think? I mean, I don't know if he's getting top 15 yet.
Really? You think so?
Herbert Burns wasn't top 15.
But he's right on the cusp. And he dominated him. This is a guy that had a lot of hype.
Yeah.
This was the one of the if you don't know, now you knows.
Okay, so what
let's
are
hear.
you thinking?
If he were to crack top 15, maybe he doesn't necessarily put a number next to his name after this, but I think he can fight a top 15 next to then crack the rankings.
Okay.
3 potential fun fights. All top 15 guys. Number 13 ranked Ryan Hall. Number 12 ranked Dan Ige. Or number 11 Sadiq Youssef, who I am huge on. Number 11 Sadiq.
I think all 3 of those will not go in our friend Pineda's favor. Just being honest.
It's just a test. Can he crack the top 15?
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
I feel like you have to he needs at least one more win before he's
top 15?
Just because, I mean, this was his first fight back, and sure, he was looking good in the PFL, and in the UFC before that, he was kind of trading wins and losses, but ultimately, I just think that, like, yeah, I mean, that was a really impressive showing, but against a guy who is still unranked, who's still young, who's still trying to earn his way into that top 15, and I think that maybe another fight, and if he puts on a good showing, then you're talking
Give
about
him a top 15 guy.
Yeah, for sure. Especially like that back half of the top 15. But I definitely like where your head is going with those matchups because that Yusuf fight would be pretty nuts.
I was just so impressed last night.
Yeah, I think it was just because we were caught off guard by it.
Yeah. Only did he win,
just
like,
to mention that our predictions, we both had Herbert Burns.
Yeah.
You had him by first round submission. I had him by second round submission.
Yeah.
And
Pineda said, "Hold my beer."
Yeah, he definitely did.
Yeah. Shout out Pineda.
Yeah, agreed.
That's all I gotta say.
So moving on to the third fight of our card.
The big boys.
The biggie boy.
The big E boy.
Yeah. Jairzinho Rosenstreich.
He's back.
Gets the dub over Junior Dos Santos by TKO in the second round.
You know, I think we did a good breakdown of this fight too.
I agree.
Not that my prediction was correct.
Yeah, just to be clear, you said JDS by first round,
right.
TKO/KO. I said Rosenstreich by first round. I did say late first round. I wish I would have went with my gut and said second round. I even said I was thinking about second round. But all in all, as far as what we talked about for this fight, I thought we nailed it.
Yeah.
Because you brought it up, but I agreed with you about we thought Rosenstreich was going to start out tentative.
Yep.
And I thought there was some of that early on.
And what I didn't expect was JDS was also tentative. They were feeding off of each other's pace.
Yeah.
Not that it was a boring fight. Like they were trading shots, but they were both just kind of feeling each other out. They weren't just throwing bombs at
Agreed.
each other.
But once they did start to open up, JDS was the one that kind of landed first.
Yeah,
and I noticed that,
was
taking
shots.
I said that in the preview that I thought JDS would hit him with a strong shot and it would kind of wake him up.
Yeah.
And I think it did.
And it goes to show, and I said this as we were watching the fight, that's how hard Ngannou hits. Because JDS hit him with 3 very hard right hands, and he was unfazed by all 3 of them.
I mean, don't get me wrong. JDS actually looked incredible going into this fight as far as like his physique.
His physique was very good.
Yeah, I mean, just not saying he hasn't looked good before.
Yeah, he was in great shape. 36 years old.
Yeah, and I thought I talked a lot about Rosenstreich having the power advantage and stuff, and I still stand by that. But I thought he was going to look a lot bigger than JDS, and he really didn't. JDS, I'm pretty sure, was taller, but he didn't even look that much bigger, if at all.
Yeah.
And that was kind of surprising for me. But yeah, no doubt Ngannou's power is on another level.
Yeah.
No matter compared to anybody in the heavyweight division.
Yeah, that's true.
So, all in all, like a pretty decent fight. Really, it was like one of those. It's one of those fights, and it's a lot like the main event in the sense that And it's kind of how it goes with heavyweights, where when they're not immediately just throwing, you are sitting there on the edge of your seat because you know at any point one punch can end it.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're watching a standoff, essentially.
Well, in the shot that dropped JDS to eventually finish the fight was so weird.
Yeah.
Like,
did not get the full power behind it.
Rosenstrike threw a left hand, and then his right hook that dropped JDS literally came down. Like, he had his arm all the way above his head. I'm, like, holding this up like they can see me. And then dropped it downward. I mean, granted, it was right on the chin. And then
he literally did not get more than half of his power on that.
No, not at all.
But it knocked JDS for a loop.
Perfect spot.
Yeah, that left hand, though, I think is really what started the finishing sequence. And great fight for Rosenstrike. Now he's, I mean, you said it, if he were to win that, he would be like a top 5 guy.
I think what makes sense. So it was number 5 JDS versus number 6 Rosenstrike. So they'll probably just flip flop because everyone else has won recently as well. I think what makes sense to me, because this is how I see the whole division playing out, Stipe will fight Ngannou for the next heavyweight title fight. Then I imagine they make Blades versus Derek Lewis, which is number 3 versus number 4. The winner of that fight would then be the number 1 contender to fight the winner of Ngannou-Stipe, in my opinion.
Probably.
So I think it makes sense for Rosenstrike to fight the loser of Blades versus Lewis.
Okay.
And then if he wins again, then he would then get a title shot. I think that's what makes sense the most.
Yeah. I guess, I don't know, just because you have to take into account, like, how active these guys want to stay.
Yeah.
So, for example, right, Curtis Blades pretty much called for the title shot after he dominated Volkov. Do I think he should get a title shot? No. Do I think he will? Absolutely not. But you have to wonder, when a guy starts saying that kind of stuff, you wonder, like, if they're going to kind of hold out, even though that really doesn't work. But you wonder if that's going to be his move. So I'm actually predicting that we won't see Blades versus Lewis. I think,
even though he kind of called for that fight.
I mean, okay, I guess you're right. Yeah, like, he did call for it.
And it's like, those are two guys in a division that we've touched on. Everybody has seemingly fought each other.
Yeah.
So it's a fight that would make sense.
Rosenstrike is kind of in a tough spot.
He is in a hard spot, yeah. Because he's not close enough to get a title shot. He's going to be 5th. So it's like...
And those top guys in front of him are all taken. And if you go behind him, you got Overeem, who he already technically beat.
Yeah.
And then really Volkov is the first guy, and I wouldn't mind seeing that matchup, Rosenstrike versus Volkov.
It would be an interesting matchup, but if I'm Rosenstrike, I don't want to take a chance fighting someone behind me.
I mean, his quote last night, they asked if he was going to call anybody out. He said, no, I'm going to let the UFC and the fans decide who my next fight is.
Yeah.
So he kind of sounds like he's going to be game. And I think a fight versus Volkov might make a lot of sense. I know Walt Harris, I'm pretty sure, has been confirmed for his next fight. I forget off the top of my head. But if Walt Harris were to get a win in his next fight, I could definitely see that matchup. So he'll have options. We'll just see how quickly he wants to get back in, and same for Blades and Lewis. Because ultimately, if one of those guys doesn't want to fight when the other does, I guarantee Rosenstrike will be the next guy to step in there. And that will be a fight that has title implications.
Yes, yeah.
So he's in a weird spot, but I don't think it's all bad.
Yeah.
You know, he won against a good test for him and passed. For JDS, he's in an even more awkward spot here. JDS has literally fought everybody. Now let me present you with the matchup, right? I would like to see JDS rematch Alistair Overeem. Two vets, two legends of the heavyweight division. I think that could be a lot of fun because they're both very competitive. JDS has lost 3 in a row now. Overeem is I feel like that guy, as soon as you think he's done, he comes back.
He comes back and knocks somebody out.
I think that could be a very fun matchup. They have not fought since, I believe, like 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So what better time than right now when you're likely going to have JDS ranked 6th, Overeem's ranked 7th.
Yeah.
It makes sense for the division. I think it's better than pairing him up, JDS speaking, with like an up-and-comer like Volkov or Sakai or Walt Harris. Like, I think you put him with someone like Overeem and like people are going to go nuts because it's legends fighting legends. These are both guys that probably aren't ever going to be in the title picture again, so why not pair them up with each other?
You know, it could also be fun if we're talking like legends.
What?
JDS versus Verdum.
Yeah, that actually
Even
could
though
be
Verdum is 13th, he's clearly not done yet. He's trying to make his way back.
Verdum, another guy, as soon as you count him out, he will prove you wrong.
That could be a fun, like, just two legends going against each other, both Brazilian heavyweights.
Yeah. Verdum.
And they haven't fought each other that I know of, have?
I don't think so.
Because Verdum beat Kane after Kane had beaten JDS, obviously.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't think they have, actually. So.
Could be fun.
I wouldn't mind seeing that. Either one of those. These are all guys that probably, and no disrespect to them, but probably aren't going to be fighting for the title.
Yeah, they don't need to necessarily fight these young up-and-coming guys.
So I think you might as well pair them up with each other, right?
Yeah.
But, I guess moving on from there.
I think
this is the controversial fight.
It's
a very interesting one.
Yeah, to say the least.
Marlon Cheeto Vera
gets the upset.
The upset.
Shut down the Sugar Show.
TKO's Sugar Sean, 4 minutes and 40 seconds into the first round. Our prediction going in, Dom.
O'Malley, first round knockout.
He said,
not looking so good.
Dom said first round knockout. I said Sugar by decision. And I think there's no better way to start this conversation than about the obvious
the elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room. Sean appeared to have broken his foot.
Yeah.
About 3 minutes into the fight.
Yeah, I'd say halfway. Yeah, 3 minutes. Yeah.
And he basically, he was still moving okay, but ultimately was.
This is a guy that bounces around a lot and relies heavily on his movement to pick his precise shots, and he couldn't do it.
And he was still moving around okay, but ultimately he was completely hindered by that.
Yeah.
And
this is the second time that this injury has happened to him in a fight.
First time he kind of got lucky because
first fight he got lucky because his
first
opponent
fight
was
against Sukimthoth, I think is how you pronounce it.
Very dumb decision by that gentleman.
Yeah. What happened was Sean breaks his foot and he can't put any pressure on it.
Literally was on the ground.
And for some reason, Sukimthoth
decided to wrestle.
Decided to take him down.
Even though he was down 2-0 in the fight.
Yeah. And he ended up.
If he made Sean stand up,
ref would have called it.
Literally because he couldn't walk.
Yeah.
And he would have won.
So Sukimthoth wins that round.
Yeah.
Loses the fight.
Exactly.
And the rest is history. Joe Rogan does the post-fight interview with Sean on the canvas. Yeah. Pretty much in a lot of pain.
What a fun post-fight interview.
Yeah. And then now it's a shame you see it happen a second time, man. Kind of dumb. I know you're a big Sugar guy. I'm curious what your thoughts are about this.
Okay. So I'm not taking anything away from Cheeto. Because it was a good
when
back
he says
and forth
that, so folks, when he says I'm not going to take anything away from him, this is going to be followed up by something that takes it away from him. So just be ready.
But he didn't do anything to impress me that much. He's a game opponent, and I think he 100% deserves all the way upward of a number 10 Rob Font type of fight. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve the big name guys, because he is a really good fighter and he's a veteran, even though he's only 27 years old. But the fight was a fun fight. They were going back and forth, picking their shots. I think Sean landed a couple of the bigger ones, but nothing noticeable happened by either fighter. Mm-hmm. Feeling each other out. Cheeto even said that's what he was going to do in the first round anyway. That was his plan. And, all of a sudden, Sean does whatever to his foot. And from there is basically useless. He can't really do anything. Mm-hmm. And it might have been caused, I know we talked about this before we started, it might have been caused by Cheeto's calf kick. It could have been caused by him, which then gives him a little more credit.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, Sean goes down in the first round. I don't know if he tripped, but like when he went to put his foot back, he couldn't stand up.
Yeah.
So he falls down. Vera then jumps on top of him, takes advantage. Now, when he was on the ground, I do think Sean kind of had given up, but Vera landed vicious elbows, and I think many like huge O'Malley fans would be like, "Oh, that was a bad stoppage," because it did come kind of early. But I think Herb knew Sean was done.
Mm-hmm.
He knew Sean couldn't stand up.
Yeah.
And Sean didn't defend. Like, he got hit clean with multiple shots, 2 brutal elbows. So overall,
disappointing as a fan of Sugar.
yeah, like, credit to Vera where it's given.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he didn't like go in there and do anything where I was like, "Oh my God, the Sugar Show's done. Vera's the beast." Like, but he deserves a top 15, upwards of like a number 10, number 9 type fight next.
Yeah.
So I hope that was a decent explanation.
No, I completely see your point of view. I do credit the
calf kick.
Yeah, let me start by saying that one of the things you really did touch on it with Sean O'Malley's footwork, how he's able to pick his shots and whatnot. And I guess to elaborate on that point, Sean will throw a lot of fakes.
Yes.
And when you're throwing fakes like that,
you're doing stutter steps.
Yeah, so normally, like when you go for a punch, you have to extend a little bit on the foot that you're throwing off.
The lead leg.
Yeah. When you're throwing a fake, you do not extend as far.
Yeah.
Because you want to be able to back out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to get stuck if you don't plan on throwing. If you don't throw anything,
and then you're open to
a shot. So Sean, doing a lot of that stuff. Once that calf kick gets thrown, I believe, and I don't know what happened, but Rogan made a good point of, well, maybe something happened before, because they kept showing just the one obvious trip that rolled his ankle.
But there was one before that was just as bad.
And but Rogan said, well, maybe something happened before that like shocked the nerves. And I think that's what happened. I think that calf kick really did shock the nerves.
Basically
in that foot.
Made his lower leg
that
numb.
Foot, same foot, I'm pretty sure that it happened to before. So maybe that's just something that's always going to be there for Sean. But
that's worrisome for a young fighter with a lot of hype.
It is.
It really is.
So Marlon has the calf kick. Doesn't look like anything crazy. But you see almost immediately after, Sean tries to do one of those fakes, rolls his ankle.
And it was a bad one.
Yeah.
Like all of his weight went down on his foot.
Yeah, and then a second time it happens, and you can tell that like he's not in a good way.
Yeah.
Not able to move near as much as he was. Still moving better than you would think for a guy with a broken foot, if that's what it was.
Yeah.
But basically, Marlon just basically starts walking him down, and I mean Sean's still trying to throw and stuff, but he ends up kind of walking on. Marlon essentially gets Sean to start backtracking, and when you're putting more pressure on that foot, Sean's not able to do it, so he falls to the ground. Marlon smells blood like a shark and jumps on top of him and throws some vicious. That's
where he landed.
Vicious elbows. The first one.
I'm shocked he didn't cut him.
I think the first one flash KO'd him.
Yeah.
If you notice,
his head bounced off
if you notice the way his eyes kind of roll back a little bit, but then he kind of comes right back to, it looks like, and then Vera is able to land a couple more, and Sean just wasn't defending himself. Man.
Yeah,
I know that people.
He looked done, like he didn't want to fight anymore,
and that's a shame. Now, don't get me wrong. If I ever broke my foot,
I wouldn't
no way.
probably want to fight either. So,
but I guess in the past we have seen guys like Cejudo when he beat Moraes, also rolled his ankle, broke his foot, however that worked. Goes on while also having a shoulder injury going in, and is able to continue to win the fight.
Yeah.
Thiago Santos blows out his whole knee and keeps winning rounds from maybe the GOAT, John Jones.
Won the fight, in my
I
opinion.
thought he won the fight.
Yeah.
these people are not normal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if Sean really felt like, I just need to get out, like, hey, like, I'm not saying that, like, he can't be a champion. I'm not saying he's not a tough guy. He still fought for 2 minutes on a broken foot. Like, you're tougher than me. But I don't want that to be used to discredit. And I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm just saying I don't want it to discredit Cheeto's win because it's like, oh, he broke his foot. He just wanted to be done.
Yeah.
Those elbows were vicious.
Yeah.
And again, if the foot doesn't break or doesn't whatever happened to it happens, that fight does not go the way it does.
Right.
Doesn't mean Vera doesn't win.
I think we see a 3-round war.
Yeah, I think that's what it was set up to do.
A technical battle.
Yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say is Sean's foot stole my rightful prediction of a 3-round war.
And potential fight of the night.
Yeah. But all jokes aside, weirdly enough, I still think this is a pretty good win for Vera.
Yeah. I
do think once O'Malley's healed up, there needs to be a rematch. And I think that would be a lot of fun because you saw the way Vera was definitely taking in the win.
He
jumped on
trying
top
to prove a point.
He jumped on top of the cage. He said, "Welcome to the Cheeto
show."
Mind you, when Sean won on Dana White Tuesday Night Contender, he said, "Welcome to the Sugar Show."
Yeah, well, that show just got postponed.
And we watched the fights at one of my good friends' apartments, and my friend, he actually picked Cheeto to win.
Yeah.
So I'll credit to him. He should be making picks, not us.
Yeah. Guest appearance coming soon.
But he said after the fight, he's like, well, damn. He's like, I don't like the way he's acting because this guy just broke his foot. He's like, and he's like showboating basically. Yeah. But on the post-fight press conference, it made a little more. It gave a little more levity.
Yeah.
He was talking about how Sean was in the back, like when they were about to come out, just like talking shit, or I don't know if it was him or his corner or whatever. And again, Sean, like, they can do that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think Sean's like upset that Vito or Cheeto was saying shit. I think he understood that you talk a big game if you don't.
That's what happens when you're on a platform like O'Malley and you have this hype and you're undefeated. The second you get beat, you're going to hear about it.
Notice O'Malley didn't argue the stoppage.
No, not at all.
He took the loss well. He was in a lot of pain and he had to be stretchered out. But, I think he'll be back. I'd like to see a rematch when he's healthy. But for now,
I want Cheeto to get a fight quick.
I do too because, man, I'm really buying into Marlon Vera. I don't know if he'll ever be a, top 5 guy.
Give me number 10, Rob Font.
Give me number 10, Rob Font.
Right now.
Yes, I love that fight.
Yeah.
And I guess just to play around here, either him or, even if you want to give him John Dodson, that could be a lot of fun.
Rob Font's on 2 in a row. Wins over Sergio Pettis and Ricky Simon.
Mm-hmm.
And his last loss was against the Sun Sal before them. He's fighting tough guys.
Yeah.
Simone is no joke.
Yeah.
And Sergio Pettis now in Bellator, if I'm not mistaken, is a stud. That's a fight that makes sense to me. Rob Font's number 10. I'd imagine that Vera gets put into at least number 14 where O'Malley was. Potentially higher depending on how they do Marab because they're in the same division and they fought on the same night. He already fought Song Yadong at featherweight for whatever reason. So maybe even rematch that at bantamweight, their rightful weight class, or Rob Font.
I definitely lean towards Rob Font because, I think most people realize Vera won that fight against Yadong.
We need to figure out why they fought at featherweight.
Yeah, but all in all, a weird fight, obviously, and it's kind of
unfortunate for O'Malley.
Unfortunate that it had to end the way it did.
Yeah.
But I am
only 25 years.
I don't want to say I'm glad that it happened this way because I'm not, but I guess considering the injury that happened, I'm glad that Vera was able to get at least some sort of finality to the fight. Like, he was able to finish the fight.
Yeah.
The fight was not stopped because of the foot.
Right.
Which it rightfully probably would have if the fight had gone
if the round had ended.
So all the credit to Cheeto for...
He did the right thing.
Yeah.
Went in for the finish.
Yeah. So I think, it'll be interesting to see where these guys go. O'Malley's obviously going to be on the shelf for a while, I would imagine. But when he's ready to come back,
It'll be a big comeback.
I'd like to see him fight Vera, or who knows.
And if you're O'Malley, it's probably best you lose now while you're still just now cracking.
Get
the top
that one
15.
out of the way, you know.
You're 25 years old.
Yeah.
You'd rather lose now than hype. Your hype carry you all the way to this top 5. Bless you. And then you get like legitimately KO'd or something.
Yeah, agreed. So into the last fight here,
the main event of the evening.
We obviously couldn't help ourselves.
Yeah, we already talked about a lot of it, but
Stipe defending his heavyweight belt against Daniel Cormier
becomes the greatest heavyweight of all time.
And I think there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy for Stipe to get that moment for us to be. I mean, he's my favorite fighter of all time.
And the trilogy is over.
Yeah.
As great as it was, it took 3 years off of our lives to see it play out.
Every one of these fights has taken years off of my life because of the stress and the just anxiety I've gotten from watching these two, because Daniel Cormier is so good.
Last night,
they're so evenly matched.
It was so great. The first 2 fights end with finishes. And then what better way than the last fight of the trilogy, who's the best, to go all 5 rounds.
Yeah.
All the way to a decision.
Yeah.
Not that I predicted a Stipe finish.
Right, so did I.
But still, there was something about seeing it go 5 rounds that was just really fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. And it almost felt like that's how it should be.
Right.
Like, who can control a fight the whole time and not just get a knockout?
Mm-hmm.
It was, and obviously Stipe did that.
Yeah, just kind of my initial thoughts about this fight as a fight. You definitely hit it when you're talking about the third fight of a trilogy, being able to go all 5 rounds. It was a great fight.
They knew everything they were going to do to each other.
It was a great fight. Very technical.
Yeah.
Not like a ton of I don't even know if I can say that. I was going to say not like a ton of action, but even then, there was some big moments for each guy.
Yeah, I don't know DC's specific numbers because they showed Stipe's because he won. Stipe landed, I think, 171 total strikes.
Yeah.
111 of them were significant.
So, 2 judges scored at 49-46, meaning 4 rounds to Stipe, to 1 to DC, and then 1 had it 3-2.
Yeah.
We both scored at 4-1.
Right.
I was very close to scoring 5-0.
That's probably more the bias fan.
I that's why I kind of checked myself.
But still not. I think anybody could have given it a 5-0. That first round was all Stipe.
Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and break it down here. So the first round, Stipe
looked so good.
Just landing a lot of good shots.
Mixing in leg kicks finally, which he hadn't done in either fight.
Yeah.
He got taken down, but literally got right back up, and that was the only time he went to the ground.
The whole fight.
He was mixing in beautiful body work again, which I didn't expect as much.
Right.
But this time it wasn't all left hooks. He was throwing straight jabs to the body. He was doing double punch combinations to the body. His jabs were insane. His right hand obviously is incredible. DC took shots.
He looked great, and then there was 30 seconds left
there wasn't
in the first
much
round,
longer in that round.
And DC lands the best shot of the round.
A big overhand right behind the ear.
And you could tell it stunned Stipe.
Didn't go all the way down.
No.
He dropped halfway down.
Yeah.
Got back up. So
but
not
still,
a knockdown.
The best shot of the round.
Yeah, and it was enough to get the round
so
for DC.
I guess it was probably enough because Stipe...
Even though he got outstruck by 3 times the amount.
Yeah. So then, really, second round was probably the most decisive one.
Yes. Well, Joe Rogan even mentioned you could have scored it a 10-8, which I thought was a little much.
If you know anything about Rogan, you know that he has been a big advocate for there being more 10-8 rounds.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't like the current scoring system. He wants there to be more, he doesn't think, this fight being 49-46 is going to be a lot more decisive than another fight that scored 49-46, but yet they have the same score.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So he wants there to be just more scoring differences, I guess. But anyways, he did mention that, but I definitely didn't think it was a 10-8 round. But
no.
This is where we first saw Stipe, his strength
Yes.
and how much of a strength that was for him in this fight.
He was so much stronger all 5 rounds. It was actually surprising.
It was very surprising because if you look at our breakdown, I did say that for Stipe he needed to be aggressive, which I thought he did a good job of being for
especially
the most
as the fight went on.
Yeah.
The second round's when really it was the
and
whole fight.
and I said that he needed to be active in the clinch. Now, what I thought,
Not the way it happened.
I thought DC was going to force the clinch,
Yeah.
and it was going to be up to Stipe to kind of keep landing shots into the body, to the face, whatever.
It was the complete opposite.
But really,
Stipe initiated the
Stipe
clinch.
would initiate it and
all fight
and
long.
basically just
Controlled.
put his dominance on this DC up against the
It
cage.
was very surprising.
Would just kind of hit him with little shots, but DC couldn't move. He couldn't.
No.
He couldn't get him off of him.
Yeah.
And
I think DC was only able to flip and get clinch control in the cage once, and it
Yeah.
wasn't long, and Stipe flipped it right back.
and then about
Another
10
almost
sec-
the end of the
10
round.
seconds left in the round. Stipe lands a really nice combination. Actually gets DC to like go down.
Yeah,
And,
DC
and the
was-
DC lands pretty much exactly like how he went down in the second fight.
Yep.
And Stipe like kind of just jumps on top
Yeah,
of him.
DC was able to grab a hold this
was
time
able to
and
hold him down.
basically just pulled him in, so
Yeah.
Stipe couldn't get the shots to get
Yeah.
real much power.
If there
behind
was 5-10
I'd say
seconds,
10 more seconds,
yeah,
it could have been over.
I think that could have been over. And you could tell by in the beginning of the third round, DC still doesn't
Well,
look
he
right.
got up, and he was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you knew."
And you could
even when the
see-
third round started, you're like, "He's hurt."
And I want to mention that when he gets up, you notice his eye is starting to swell,
Yeah,
which does play into later. Third round starts. DC still
he's
he looks
noticeably
slower.
injured at the beginning of the round.
Noticeably slower, and I think it's because he's hurt.
Yeah, he was wobbled.
So
Yeah.
Stipe's still landing big shots to start the round.
But he stayed patient enough and didn't feel the need to go in for the kill
Yeah.
and then get caught, which
Yeah.
I liked.
And then I think this is the only time that maybe I wish he wouldn't have went to the clinch.
Yeah.
So he goes to the clinch again, holds him up against the cage, but it gives DC time to recover.
Yeah, that's when he noticeably, once that clinch ended, DC was back. He was
Yeah.
back, got his wits about
Yeah.
him.
And I think in Stipe's mind, he was ready for 5 rounds.
Yeah.
So I think that's where a lot of this was happening, is that I don't think he was expecting maybe to even finish DC. I think he looked at it like, I got to be ready for 5 rounds with
Yeah.
this guy, because we both have finished each other. Basically what we all said. We both have finished each other. He's going to know everything I have. I know everything he has.
Yeah.
But another great round for the champ. I believe this is the round, though, that...
This is the eye poke.
Yeah, he lands a very nasty eye poke.
Now, we didn't mention Stipe did also get poked again in this fight, which makes it all 3 fights.
Yeah,
Stipe
DC
was
poked Stipe in the
I think it was the first round.
The first round.
The fight had to be paused.
Goddard stops the fight, lets Stipe recover.
Threatens to take a point away
Towards
if it happens again.
towards the end, it was like the very end of the third round. Stipe lands a just nasty eye poke.
It was a bad one.
Knuckle deep.
It was bad. I don't like looking at the picture.
Yeah, and
But it wasn't like...
it happens very late in the round. So
And it wasn't intentional. Like, these guys don't poke each other in the eyes on purpose.
No.
DC didn't do it on purpose.
This just really means that the UFC still needs to do something about their gloves.
Yeah, man. And especially the fights like this, you
Yeah.
don't want to see that.
No. Because, like, we you know...
I'd
I
rather
don't
see a guy get kicked in the dick than get poked in the eye.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't want to see these big fights have any, like, asterisks next to them in
Yeah.
anybody's mind. I don't want it to ever be in doubt.
yeah.
The
Especially,
first fight, when DC knocks out Stipe, you notice Stipe gets poked in the eye,
Yeah.
like 5 seconds before DC lands the punch that ultimately he doesn't
And
see
before
coming.
that clinch, he had been poked in the
Yeah.
right eye, which was a very bad one.
And then in this fight,
They both poked each other.
But Stipe poking DC. DC's eye was already compromised from the swelling,
yeah.
but ultimately this poke is
Yeah, it made it worse.
basically leaves DC with one eye the rest of the fight.
Yeah.
And he fought admirably considering that.
Yeah.
But to me, there was no doubt, like, as long as DC didn't knock out Stipe, I felt like Stipe was really hitting his stride in
Yeah.
the third and fourth round. And then the fifth, you know, really the rest of the fight was just control.
Some
Control
people
was
were
the...
giving DC that 4th round, and I just don't see that.
I don't see how.
I could probably rewatch it again today
The only
and not
round,
feel that
the
way.
only round that I thought while watching that you could even consider giving to DC was the first.
The fourth round was the only round that DC outstruck Stipe, and I think it was only by 7.
Yeah.
And in that fourth round, Stipe had 3 minutes and 3 seconds of clinch control time.
And 2 of the 3 judges agreed with us that
Yeah.
it should be 4 rounds to 1. So,
Yeah.
I mean, not trying to act like... I mean, the guys who matter as far as their decision, they scored it that way. I was surprised to see on Twitter guys like Brett Okamoto.
Well, Dana had it 2-2 going into the fifth.
Yeah, Dana did as well.
Which was surprising.
All in all, though, to me, in my mind, it was like there was no doubt.
It was 3-1.
But you always get nervous when it goes to a decision. Because we've talked about it so many times when we've disagreed.
You never know what these judges are going to do.
We were talking about boycotting the podcast if DC got the decision. But all in all, Stipe gets the nod.
Fifth round, nothing notable happens. He controls the fight more.
He puts him in the clinch. And
more clinch.
Yeah.
They both land big shots.
They both tire, man. Stipe looked exhausted.
Were very tired.
Those last 30 seconds, Stipe looked
He took a big breath, and you're like, all right, just hold your clinch, finish the fight.
Yeah.
But they were both tired. What a fight.
Yeah, what a fight. And
what a trilogy.
More importantly from here, in my opinion, the best trilogy in the UFC's ever had. If you just look at all 3 fights delivered.
Yeah.
So, moving on from here.
What's next?
What is next for these 2 guys? And I
DC
think
retired.
The obvious one's DC is likely retired, and I fully believe
I don't need to see him come back. That's nothing to get that sounded bad.
He said in his post-fight interview with Rogan, he said he's only interested in fighting for titles, so he doesn't.
And he doesn't see that happening again.
So he's.
He lost 2 out of 3 to Stipe, and he lost to John twice. One of them's a no contest, but he doesn't have anything left to prove. That's why I don't need to see him come back. He's 41. He's got the UFC 4 video game stuff he's working on. He's a UFC commentator. He's a high school wrestling coach. He helps train with AKA. Stay retired and just bring more content to us from your knowledge that you have as a fighter.
No,
he doesn't need to fight again. There's nothing to prove.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously he said he's not someone that likes to make these decisions based on right at the end of the fight, because that's an emotional response. But he's been saying that this is his last fight.
Yeah.
For a while.
And he's been wanting to retire for years. So
I think that's a good, I mean,
get your eye healed.
And who would have thought, if you would have went back to when we started really getting passionate about the sport, 4 years ago for me or so, 5 years ago for you, who would have thought that if someone would have said, DC's going to have a trilogy that essentially defines his career, who would have thought that it wouldn't have been with John Jones?
Yeah.
It's really, if you look at it, what makes me so proud is that, nothing against John Jones, but I'm so glad that really DC, his career is not defined with John Jones anymore, in my opinion.
I agree.
For a while there, it looked like it was always going to be, because that was their big
John
bad
Jones
blood
is like
rivalry.
that dark cloud that hovered over his entire
I don't
career.
think he does anymore. DC was able to prove himself in another division, and he's the second best ever in that division for the UFC. So,
and one of the greatest all-around fighters of all time.
Yeah, if you had him at number 9 on your top 10, he would be number 11 on mine.
Yeah.
So, all in all, what a career. And I definitely hope that he stays retired. So then, the champion, Stipe, what's next? And I think there's only two
options.
There's only 2 possible options here, and I'll let you tell him.
Okay, so John Jones was all over Twitter last night, calling, he's going to be in the heavyweight division. He sees all these championships. Soon he'll be the baddest man on the planet. He's too quick for Stipe. He'll capitalize at the right times. All he has to do is avoid Stipe's right hand, yada, yada, yada. I am so incredibly intrigued by a John Jones versus Stipe super fight. But I don't think the UFC will have John just skip over Ngannou, I think the biggest thing is because of how John's last 2 fights have went.
Yeah.
Now, if John was coming off 2 convincing wins and he's kind of just sitting around waiting because there's no one else to fight, then it's like, okay, John can hop over Ngannou because Ngannou's lost to Stipe, right?
Right.
But the way John's last 2 fights have gone, I think John needs to do one more light heavyweight fight and get a convincing win, or at least a freaking decision that people think he actually wins.
Yeah.
And Ngannou gets his rematch, which is rightfully earned,
Mm-hmm.
against Stipe. And that's a big rematch, and I was telling you before we recorded, it's crazy how it could potentially be Stipe's last 3+ years of fighting could potentially just be with 2 people.
Yeah.
Because he fought Ngannou and beat him, and then the trilogy with DC started.
Right.
And now he could potentially rematch Ngannou again.
Literally.
But I think that's what makes the most sense.
Literally, if you look, that Stipe versus Ngannou fight was January of 2018.
Yeah.
Since 2018, Stipe has fought 2 individuals. It's been Ngannou, and then the 3 fights with DC.
Yeah.
And we mentioned it in our preview show that if Stipe would have lost, we thought, really at this point it feels like he's too big to be going back and trying to work his way back to a title shot.
Yep.
So now that he has, he wins, fortunately for him. So now I think it's obvious that it's him versus Ngannou for a second time. I think there's no other fight.
I think he can fight Ngannou. John Jones can fight a rematch with Reyes or fight Jan Blachowicz. Both of them win, and then, boom.
Yeah.
There's the super fight we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
I don't need to see it
Curtis
next.
Blades would probably be very upset at you for saying that, but I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, unfortunately for Curtis Blades, he doesn't really have Dana White's
seal of approval.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely Stipe versus Ngannou too. Ngannou also,
preferably end of the year pay-per-view, by the way.
While you mentioned Jones was on Twitter talking a lot of shit, Ngannou also was on Twitter, but not talking shit.
He's the nicest guy.
Yeah, he gave props to both fighters in the main event and said, Stipe, I will see you soon.
Yeah, he said, Jones,
then,
wait your turn.
And
I'm next in
his
line.
next one, he said, how about Stipe versus Ngannou too, last card of the year. I think that makes a lot of sense. Stipe,
I would love to see Stipe come back and fight.
Stipe even joked in the post-fight press conference about because one of the questions being asked to him was is he gonna continue to kind of do this fighting once a year type thing, and his joke was essentially because he basically made it clear it wasn't his choice to only fight once a year.
Yeah.
It was the fact that he had the torn
eye issues,
the torn
retina surgery.
So he had to get surgery on that, and then you have COVID playing a factor in
Yeah.
him not being able to really get much of a camp for a while.
Yeah, I think this third fight could have happened sooner. It was
supposed to happen in the spring.
Yeah.
That was kind of the plan, but then the eye injury, COVID, put that on hold. So he pretty much joked about that. He's like, I want to keep fighting once a year. He's like, I was really hoping I'd get my other retina torn tonight so that way I could get surgery on it and piss everybody off again while I wait a whole year.
The good thing is, Stipe didn't take too much damage.
No, he really didn't, as far as we
Compared to the
know.
other
As far
two
as we
fights.
know, sometimes you just don't know.
So I think,
For all we know, he broke his hand and you just don't notice. That happens. But it looked like he didn't take a ton of damage.
I'd love to see him just rest up the rest of August.
Yeah.
And then we get a fight announcement in September. And then he has, all of September, all of October, all of November. And then he fights at the very end of December.
Yeah. And
I think that's doable.
And
Ngannou's ready.
Yeah. And talking about Jones, I definitely think Jones needs to rematch Reyes. Sure.
He needs to just be
Jan Blachowicz has earned his title shot. But I think when you're talking about John Jones and the fact that Reyes one is so debated, I think it needs to be Reyes. Because if he fights Blachowicz and wins convincingly, then people are going to still say, well, he's ducking Reyes. Just like when he was saying all that stuff on Twitter last night about Stipe, what were the comments saying? You're ducking Reyes.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I agree.
I don't think
that.
John Jones is necessarily scared of
I don't
anyone,
think Jones is scared of anybody.
but I think he knows how good Dominic Reyes is.
Well, I think he knows how good he is. I don't think that's why he wants to move the heavyweight. I don't think he's moving the heavyweight to get away from Reyes.
I just don't think he wants to take a risk at losing his belt.
Oh, I don't know if I agree with that. I think that
I know he's a very confident guy.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think this is literally maybe the best fighter ever, and I think if anybody knows that, it's John Jones.
I don't agree with people saying he's ducking Reyes. It's just like,
well, you're saying that he doesn't want to take a risk. I
think he realizes the threat that Reyes poses, and he sees.
I can promise you,
Stipe has an easier matchup.
I can promise
that's
you
a
that
podcast for another day.
I can promise you that if
and he's not going to get as much money. If
everybody who's been saying, the majority of people seem to think Reyes won that fight over Jones. I can promise you that doesn't piss off anybody more than John Jones. And the idea of getting that win rectified in his mind.
I hope that's what happens.
I don't know if it will, because ultimately there's also the thing with the pay dispute.
Yeah.
He wants more money.
Well, he's obviously going to make more money if he goes up to heavyweight.
So I'll tell you what I think is most likely here. Most likely, I think it'll be Stipe versus Ngannou too, like it should. And I think it'll be Reyes versus Blachowicz for the either interim or undisputed light heavyweight belt. And while Jones
just continues to hold out.
And based off if basically I could totally see, let's say Reyes beats Blachowicz, I could see John coming back, beating, if he were to come back and beat Reyes more convincingly, then all of a sudden, let's say Stipe or whoever wins the Stipe Ngannou fight, he calls out that guy, goes up to heavyweight after that. So it might take a little bit longer than we might be thinking. Like right now, we're thinking end of the year maybe.
Yeah.
I think it might be something that it won't actually happen for Jones until the spring or even beginning of summer 2021. But it is going to happen. I would like to think him at heavyweight at some point. Will it be against Stipe? Will it be against Ngannou? Both of those fights excite me, but Stipe versus Ngannou is the fight.
Yeah.
And what a big fight that'll be, because really that win against Ngannou has aged better and better for Stipe.
Yep.
Just how impressive he looked, but Ngannou went back to the first. He has the really bad fight with Lewis, which
neither one of them won that fight.
And then
can you give a no win to either guy?
Yeah, and then after that fight, you can tell that
he's back.
He beats
back better than he was.
He beats
before.
Blades in about 45 seconds, and I think that was the confidence boost he needed, and he went on another tear. So he's earned it.
Yes,
man. I mean, he's back. And looks better than ever. He's cut down on his weight a little bit, looking a little leaner. It'll be interesting to see how that fight goes the second time, and we will obviously be looking forward to an announcement where we get to talk about it more. But
yep.
I think that's pretty much it for what's going on with that fight.
And that's the recap.
That's the recap. So guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up and talk about the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Very excited about
fun one
Wednesday.
playing for Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday, very fun. Essentially, we are in August of 2020, and we are going to be predicting who the champion of each division will be in August of 2021.
1 year from now.
1 year from now, who will be the champion of each division. And why is that fun? Because so much is going to happen.
And it's all hypothetical.
Yeah, so much is going to happen.
Yeah.
Guys fight sometimes 3-4 times a year.
And some fight once a year.
If they lose one, all of a sudden they're not in title contention, not a champion, whatever.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be just fun to play around
with a year from now, when we listen back, we'll probably look at it and go, oh, we got like 2 right.
That's a podcast I'm already ready to record, and it's a year out.
Yeah, so all in all, like, I think it's just a fun idea. Like, it's not something we're taking too seriously, like, where we think this is legitimately going to be who it is. Yeah. But it's just it's based on who we like right now, who we think surging to that point, who will be surging by that point. And, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to make. So be on the lookout for that on Wednesday. And then Friday will be our preview show for the Fight Night card on Saturday.
Munoz versus Edgar.
Pedro Munoz versus Frankie Edgar.
Frankie Edgar's bantamweight debut, finally.
Yeah.
Long awaited.
Also, Ovince St. Preux is on the co-main. So it should be a pretty good
It's
fight.
a night of fights that I think a lot of people don't know much about. So it'll be a fun breakdown to kind of give some
and some of those
lesser
guys,
known people.
and some of those guys we don't know about.
Yeah, we're gonna
so
have to do some
we're gonna
homework.
do some homework and not fuck up like I did earlier,
or try not to.
Yeah. So
we're not guaranteeing.
Be on the lookout for that.
It's gonna be a fun week too.
Yeah. So Dominic, tell the people where they can find you on social media.
Personally, Twitter, Instagram, DSalee14, and of course, our lovely Below Average Joe's podcast Instagram page. You can find that at Below Average Joe's _podcast. From there, you can find a lot of posts about kind of just small clips of what you can expect in our episodes. Instagram stories of what we're working on and what's coming up. For example, the 253 main event fight announcement we posted on our story, and just a bunch of fun content.
Yeah.
So go give us a follow if you don't already.
Agreed. And for me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ntbaker_. And with that, we're out, and we will see y'all on Wednesday.